Any of you have not met, Mike Gower, Senior Vice President for Finance and Treasurer. Treasurer is Town Hall, that works. We are privileged to have a guest speaker who will be coming towards the end of the program, and it's Dr. Clifton Lacey. He is Director of the University Center for Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Response. He's going to be talking about biohazards, including Ebola and different things. And before you think, okay, that's a scary subject, he really gives a nice talk around that. I had the privilege of seeing it, and I thought when we did one of these in Newark, and thought, okay, he needs to come and give that again. So he'll be here a little bit later. So in the meantime, you get something really unexciting, and that's listening to me. So I wanted to talk about what we're doing in the whole area of administrative systems. And it's a big, fat, hairy project that we're going to be conducting over the next several years. And it's important to know what's going to happen when and things to expect. This is will be part of regular updates that we'll be doing through the town hall and other means, for the next 5 years. But this will give you a feel for what's in the pipeline, what to really think about, how things are going to happen in the next year in particular, and what to expect in terms of issues around change management and training and communications and what have you. So why are we doing all these things? I think it's important always to come back to the purposes. Why are we going to change systems? Well, the merger itself with the units that came from UMD&J brought to us a whole another set of administrative systems. So we still are running 2 of everything. 2 general ledgers, 2 HR payroll systems, 2 procurement systems, 2 of everything. And that's not only confusing, but not tolerable from the standpoint of just running the place and getting information that works together. And as you can imagine, those 2 systems are set up dramatically differently. Different charts of accounts, different sets of work rules because of how UMD&J was set up, all sorts of differences. So that's one reason to put things together. University-wide efficient, effective, responsive business practices and systems is a foundational element of the university's strategic plan, and it's one of the most reliable ways to provide real savings that can go towards mission-based strategic initiatives. So that's number 2. The move to responsibility-centered management budgeting requires a system that supports that out of the box intuitively, gives the kind of reporting that's necessary to manage to that new model. And then what I think is just the basic blocking and tackling that we don't pay enough attention to in colleges and universities in general is that we need to provide the right kind of information in the right way to people who have to manage the hundreds of different types of businesses we have at a university like this. And I specifically do not mean a one-size-fits-all, because there's different management information needed for running dining halls than for running athletics, than for running a school, than for running a center. And I have to pay attention to those differences and make it work for the people we're asking to manage those things, the people that are accountable for those business lines, if you will. So those are pretty good reasons to do this. The other thing that is critical, and I think this is not just because of the merger, but the merger is a good excuse for it, is that we really do need to look at our business practices here. We really do need to look at our policies, the processes that we use. Many of them are rooted in something that happened, a decade or so ago. Many of them are a way of doing business around an old system. Many of them are just archaic and need to be reviewed. So one of the things we're saying about these projects is that these are not IT projects. In fact, if Don Smith were here, he'd be the first to say, as the Chief Information Officer, these are not IT projects. IT will enable them, but if we don't address them as business management projects, then we'll fail. So we are addressing them as business management projects. And the first and foremost thing that we will do for every one of the systems is to look at the organizations that will be using them, both as the provider of service and the customers of service, and organize the business processes and information correctly. So most of you, if you haven't been inundated by research administration project information, you will continue to be inundated with it. That's one example that's been going on since November, where we brought in Huron Consulting Group to look at every facet of grants management from beginning to end, with an emphasis on the principal investigator as a customer and the sponsor as a customer. And the point there is, we've got to consider all these services as being for customers, and in any of the organizational design or any of the business processes that are set up. So that is the first one out of the gate. There's one going on right now with the University Controller's Office. There will be more coming down the line. HR payroll is coming up soon. And as everything here, we have to put everything out to bid, so it takes time to do that. But that's what we're doing. And we're using the choice of the system as a way to start in terms of how the business processes would work. So in our case, we're going with upgraded, not current, but upgraded Oracle products, and we're going to be going with vanilla configurations. And vanilla is important here because our existing systems, both the ones that were on Rutgers' side before the merger and those that came from UMD&J, are highly customized. And the reasons for those may have been perfectly valid when they were done, but they're not sustainable going forward. So we're going to be using a lot of vanilla processes. Now, the good thing is that most of these systems have developed over the years to accommodate higher education better. But I will say that the statement by the president last week was that he insists that any customization he personally will have to sign off on. And he has no intention of doing that. Now, if we have something that the law requires or something that I worked under that kind of rule when I did a project at Duke back in the late 90s, and we were given 5 customizations. We ended up using 3, and one of them got adopted by the company as the best practice. Sometimes you have to, but the intent is to start off saying, nope, we're not going to do that. So these are the things we have to pay attention to. How do we eliminate duplicative efforts? Multiple touches is one way of putting that. How do we improve the quality? How do we enhance customer service? And any business processes that we look at as a result of these studies that isn't dependent on the system being in place, they're going to go into effect right away. You'll see in the research world a lot of the findings that have come out of this study or coming out of that study are dependent on the system projects, but many of them are not. Many of them are things that can be done right now, and they're going to be done right now. Things like project setup or award setup. That can happen right now, and it will. So any of that can go on will. And then last but not least on this page, those last 3 items in the bottom. As projects fail, projects like this fail, either in higher education or frankly anywhere else, it's because there wasn't enough attention paid to these 3 things. What's the impact of change on the users? What's going on in the project? such that people are prepared, and then how do you get trained for it? And I'll talk about that a little bit more, but this is an area where we're going to be paying probably the most attention as we go through the project. Oh, by the way, all these slides are going to be available on my website tomorrow, maybe even later today, finance.rutgers.edu. So you can download a copy anytime. And then a bunch of older ones have been on here too. This is something that I thought, I actually lifted this from a consulting firm. But I thought it was well done in the right order. So, hello? This is not it. This is it. Okay, plans that can be implemented related to these 5 pillars. People and organizational structures, number 1. Can't measure, we can't improve, number 4. And finally, we get to the technologies. I think this is the right order of how to look at these things. And this is from having been in charge of a whole bunch of projects over my time with a lot of scars. You know, and I do not want to repeat old mistakes. So this is a general timeline of what to expect in the whole systems project, and it's a busy thing. I'll talk about it in more detail, but when you go back and download this thing, it's a good reference document. But we are starting phase 1 right now, having been in phase 0 for about all the time since I've been here, which is back to October of 13. And phase 0 was just getting ready, finding the facts, getting ready. Since we ended up with 2 systems, we had to basically pick one of them, and we went through the process of doing that. And then, as I say, just getting ready to do this. We're in this stage now, and let me get into more detail about that. This is going to go through between now and say the middle of calendar year 16, so a year and a little more. That will follow by project work that'll go on in calendar 16 in general, probably slop into 17, and that is going to be focusing on primarily HR and payroll and the beginning of work around student information systems. And then at the latter part of this time, really focusing on upgrade to payroll and bringing in a new student information system. So that's the high-level view. So just for a feel for what was in the predecessor projects, what was in this phase 0, well, we did that effort of choosing which system, looking at the requirements, looking at which of the 2 systems made most sense, and we did that. That's done. We also did a financial reporting project, and that brought data from both systems and did it such so that we could produce a similar financial report, no matter which side of the university it came from. And that was really needed for last year's audit, which was the first one of the combined entity, and will facilitate this year's audit a lot. It also allowed us to start working on a new chart of accounts. So how do we get a new set of coding that will deal with not only both needs, both sets of needs, the combined sets of needs, but also better reporting. And I'll talk about that a little more. And then some business process things that are going on regarding how the controller's office works. You may have seen a notice just recently about the first foray of RAPS, which is the pre-award system for grants and contracts. That's in its first rollout stage, I think, for the next NIH funding cycle. That's a related project, very important, one that's also tied into that overall research administration one. Developing a reporting strategy for all projects. I was talking about those different reporting needs. And here is where we're going through a concerted effort of both identifying what those different reporting needs are, and then how do we do that on the back end. This is an area where it usually is left for the or in many cases left for the end of the project when it's maybe too late or people run out of steam. But we're trying to figure out, well, you know, what kind of data warehouse might we need? What kind of tools could we use? We have a lot of tools already. How can we continue to use them? How do we make sure the data come in the right way? But again, with a focus on what is the end report? What's the customer report? Setting up a project management office, talk more about that in a little bit. And then one very important under the radar system for some people, but it's going to be important for all of us at the end, is a consolidated space management system, facilities management system, which is bringing together information from 10 different systems when you had the combined Rutgers, UMD&J, new Rutgers. This is a big effort coming out of Tony Calcado's operation in concert with a lot of people in my operation and others. And this is going to be vitally important for understanding how do we use space, costs around space. It feeds directly into the RCM budget process in terms of being the source for information on space costs. It also feeds into our federal reporting on facilities administrative costs. So that's almost ready to come out onto the street. Really done well with that. Here's where we're going for the next year. So we're starting with financial management. So this is, it's an upgrade of Oracle product. It's called Fusion, and it's going to be based in the cloud. It's not going to be run on premises here, but be based in the cloud. And I call this kind of the you know, what's the that's why I call it foundational projects. What do you need to have before you start building on everything else? A new general ledger, a single new general ledger system. Something that, you know, there's two things I get cheers about sometimes on in this talk. One is grants management. The other one I'll talk about later. But having an integrated grants management system is something that I know is a desperate need here. Something that provides good project information on a real-time basis and includes, you know, information that a PI can use, that a department can use, that you know, anybody can use in terms of appropriate needs. That's critical. That same module can be used to do things like startup funds or small departmental projects that cross fiscal years. Any of those kinds of things. Something that crosses fiscal years or isn't running on a July to June cycle. That's where this can be used, in addition to grants and contracts. Accounts receivable and cash management and treasury are two items that were never turned on the last time the projects were done, and will be very helpful for both internal sales of services and external sales, as well as just, you know, managing the day-to-day banking and cash management of the institution. So that's a big project. Our intent is we're starting it right now, and we'd go live July 1 of 16. So for not the coming fiscal year, but the next one, fiscal 17. Okay? So for the next year, we'll continue to be running 2 general ledgers. And a lot of work has gone in already, as I mentioned, to the chart of accounts, which is a fundamental piece of a new general ledger, and then how to crosswalk from, you know, how Oracle now codes things or how Banner now codes things to a consolidated, a single way of doing it. A lot of that work's already done, and that usually takes up a huge part of the first part of this kind of project. So by the needs that we had already to do financial reporting, a lot of that's in place. And some of that has been talked around as Steve DiPaolo and crew have been, Ernst & Young, the firm that's helping us with that, have been shopping that around a little bit around key users. So we'll get more information out about that as it kind of finalizes. We're also doing a major emphasis on budget and financial planning tools, in particular for budget preparation and forecasting. This has been something like this has been in place for, I hate continuing to use Legacy Rutgers, but for Legacy Rutgers for some time. Well, this is going to be a set of tools for the whole institution, and it's going to be set around both the RCM model and management models. So starting with the fall of this calendar year, service units like mine, like facilities, like IT, like any of the service units will start their budgeting for the next fiscal year using these tools. Now, many of these units will be using this, an early version of these tools, or a current version of these tools, in the next month or so for this coming year. But I'm talking about redoing the whole thing and basically we're starting from scratch and aligning with the Responsibility Center management budget model. So schools, centers, responsibility centers in general will have this available to them starting in January of 16 for the fiscal 17 budget. And then it'll be our budget system of record going forward. There's some pieces there that'll be important in terms of management reporting tools and some things that are more useful for within planning, financial planning overall within my shop. But in particular, we're also going to be putting in a capital planning tool that I think will be very useful between facilities management, planning, and information technology, and then my shop that goes out and looks at how do we get money to pay these things for these capital needs. Procurement applications. So again, we had two of everything, two procurement tools, one Oracle, one named SciQuest, and we picked the SciQuest tool that had been used by, or continues to be used by RBHS units as the marketplace, if you will, for buying things, externally or internally, goods and services. And it will be re-implemented. If anybody's here from RBHS and been using it, it'll be re-implemented. It'll be set up with all the university's contracts, terms, conditions, deliveries, all the sorts of things you need. Very, very much like Amazon for shopping. It's a nice thing. And then for expense management, we're going to be bringing in an expense management system that's tied in with the general ledger that will replace the Tabor. This is when I usually get a cheer. Because that is just intolerable thing. And it's about as inefficient as you can possibly make it. So this will be an online tool. We'll probably even be getting to, I saw somebody who uses one of these recently, and they had a receipt from lunch, and they just took out their smartphone and took a picture of that receipt, and it went right into their expense management system. And that's how it's done. It will allow for time. Yeah, thank you. Wait till we do it. Okay. It'll allow for tying in with travel agents. It'll allow for tying in with all sorts of stuff. It'll allow for workflow and all that business. It likewise will be coming up in July of 16, so the fiscal 17. And tied in with that, we're going to be putting in a procurement travel card program. Because one of the things I personally find unacceptable is that we ask people who travel to put university expenses on personal credit cards and then take 45 to 60 days to pay you back. That's just unacceptable. And this is something that's well worn through the rest of higher education, not to mention industry. So having travel cards tied in with an expense management system provides you the convenience, the record keeping, and the controls that you need to do it, and it's a no-brainer. So we'll be going out onto the market to work with a financial services company to help with that. The next big piece of work is moving RBHS employees to the current HR payroll system from Rutgers, the PeopleSoft system. This, although Vivian Fernandez disagrees with me, this is a very unsexy project. It's simply intended to try to get everybody onto one system before we try to do an upgrade. It's just would be impossible to try to take people being paid from two different systems to a new upgraded system. So we are bringing over the RBHS employees and setting them up in existing PeopleSoft system and without really touching anything else in it. And the critical piece there is get them paid right, get it going, get them moved. It'll be complicated by the fact that we still have different work rules for some classes of employees. And to the extent that contract negotiations for some of the unions that came from UMD&J have concluded and gone to a consolidated or agreed to a consolidated set of work rules, that'll happen with this move. Any that are not, we'll be setting up the other way. But we'll have everybody on one system and be paying them out of one system. We're going to be starting the HR payroll business process review with the idea that a year from now we'll start the real work on a new HR system, presuming we get this done. And then there's some critical IT infrastructure things going on, in particular email consolidation. Depending on who you ask, we have more than 200 email systems throughout Rutgers. Most universities have one. That's tough to maintain and tough to accept, and so we need to get down to one, and we'll be doing so. There's also some stuff in the data centers that's going to be important going forward, and those are going on. And then down here in student information system. So right now we have, again, two student information systems, a banner system for RBHS and a homegrown system for Rutgers. Anybody in here use the Rutgers student information system? Okay. So, it's put together with paper clips and chewing gum, and, I mean, it's one of the systems that has been built by necessity over time, old language, hard to support, all that sort of thing. And there are those who would argue, and I was one of them initially, that we actually have more risk in that system than any others because, there could be a time that we have some kind of compliance requirement from the feds on financial aid that we just can't make it do it. So there's risk in that. There's also risk that people don't know how to program it, or they've either retired or died, or not willing to do it anymore. But the problem here is that of all the things we do at Rutgers, the most customized is student services. Where we have differences not just between New Brunswick and Newark, we have differences between schools in New Brunswick. And most of those differences are just not, they're not justifiable, at least not anymore. And so this is where we need the most business process work. We need to understand how to do admissions and financial aid in the new reorganized Rutgers environment. We need to have it in such a way that it's pointing towards customer service to the student or the parent or the faculty is using it or whomever. And so that's why if you go back to this page, you see student down here. And that's just because we're going to need all that time to do the business process work here and to do it well. So that's getting started. There's an RFP going out on the street in a few weeks around enrollment management and financial aid, the first two student service things that are out of the block. The other complication with doing students is it's the system that has the most different types of starting points. So unlike a general ledger where you like to start in the beginning of a fiscal year, you have an admission cycle, you have an acceptance cycle, you have a financial aid cycle, you have a registration cycle, you have a billing cycle. And if you miss, you got to get them in the right sequence. And if you miss it, you got to wait till the next time. So this is the other reason why it's kind of backloaded there. When you download this, take a look at it. This is just for show how much is going to happen at one time. So it's a very busy time. It's doable. It's doable if we do our business process work right, if we pay attention to it and not the technology until we're ready. But, and you'll see that here, business process review, business process review, business process or BPR up here. That's the front loading of all these things. If we do that right, then the IT part will be straightforward. And this too is busy. Again, read it at your leisure when you download these if you wish. But it's intended to just show a little bit more of all the things that are going on at one time. Target timelines of validating the chart of accounts and RFPs on the street. Different RFPs on the street, different tasks that have to go. We have an implementation RFP on the street for procurement, one for financial operations, one for HR payroll, a lot of stuff going on in that element. Again, we're looking for good partners to help us do this right with the business process work first. So across all these projects, I say there's an umbrella. And the umbrella is the project management office. And the project management office is somewhat virtual. It's actually not physical yet at all. It will be shortly. And these are the 5 things that the project management office will do and will enforce across all these projects. So the first is project management. Okay, duh. But project management is a set of skills that people need to learn and use. And it's a set of tools that people need to learn and use. And I would dare say we at Rutgers need to learn this better and do it better. And in many cases we do. We have good project management offices in IT. We have good ones in facilities. And we need to extend those more broadly around projects that don't involve buildings and IT directly. So this is critical set of skills, vital to move along and to enforce. Change management, skill development for teams, impact analysis. So as we bring forward a new way of doing things, what is that impact on you and you and you? So that we can both help you get used to that and you can be ready for it. Okay. Change management is, again, a set of skills and tools that can be taken across multiple projects and used well to help people adjust. Now, change is hard for everybody, and this change will be hard. There's just no way around that. But we can make it more manageable if we do this the right way. And another part of change management is communications, constant, consistent, regular, something you can count on. If you get to the point where you're getting sick of it, then we're getting close to having enough. But that's something that'll be vitally important. Training. Training is not a one-size-fits-all. In fact, we have to figure out all the different types of training that we need. We need in-person training, yes. We also need on-demand referencing. We need webinars, things that you can do from your desk while you're trying something. One thing we found at the last place I did one of these, what I call problem luncheons, where we have a room like this, people bring their brown bag, we're set up to say, bring your work, bring the problem you have, and then we have experts in the room that help you get through it. That's one example of a good tactic to take on training writ large. We need to think about how to do help desk, right? What can we do to develop It's called frequently asked questions. There are all sorts of good tools and models for this. We do not have to invent any of this. We just have to get it in place. Okay? And then ongoing refresher and new skills courses. So everybody on these projects focus on getting you ready for day one. And I always like to say, well, we also need to have the right kind of training for the person who's starting work at Rutgers on day two. And then refreshers. There's some things that will happen once a year, once a month, once a quarter. And we have to have capabilities either in person, webinar on demand, things that you can refer to when you need to go remind yourself how to do that one thing. And something that we'll be doing here as a result of the new system, and that is the certification process. So to get access to it, you'll have to go through certification. There will be a prescribed training and testing mechanism, and that it's not going to be an insurmountable hurdle. It just means you've got to go through that process to get through it. If you're going to be running payroll, then there'll be a certification process for that. If you're going to be doing grants management, there'll be a certification process for that. So we'll be working hand in hand with HR to develop this, and as well as the other tools that are needed to do these sorts of things throughout the project and consistent in each phase. And then reporting I talked about before. Most important thing here is single sources of the truth. And common tools that are good at multiple levels. Some people need just a dashboard. Some people need what we call a canned report. I just want to take that out for my unit. That's all. Some people are the data geeks that need really high-end analytics. So we need to deal with all 4 or 5 of those different tiers of reporting needs. And then likewise have a help desk situation that will allow people to get through. So we made a lot of progress in this project management office. The gentleman right here. Stand up, John. This is John Fakasny. He is the project executive. So he is teaming with Seppi Sipazi, who is Associate Vice President for Strategic and Financial Initiatives, in terms of managing the project management office. And this it's by no means precise, but John is a very experienced individual on ERP implementations. He was the most recently interim chief information officer at Yeshiva University. He's done projects both at Yeshiva and at, I guess CBS is your biggest one. Did the ERP implementation, ran that for the CBS. And I don't mean just the TV network, I mean their entire portfolio, which, as we've talked, sounds a lot like running a university. So he came to us on March 30th, and they've been hitting the ground running. We are recruiting a change management expert and communications expert, communications in concert with Kim Manning, VP for communications for the university. And we're getting into the definition stage for training and reporting. We have picked up a lot of the good things that went on during the integration project. And we're extending them into the project management office. And in fact, we picked up 2 of the project managers from that project, along with others who were in IT, one that was in controller's office, various folks who have the skill sets for project management. They are coming to individual projects as we go through here. And then as needed, we'll contract with outside. Every project needs a governance structure. This one's a very busy one. It's because we're doing a lot of things at one time. But it starts off with Executive Steering Committee, which consists of most of the senior leadership of the university, the 4 chancellors, most of the senior vice presidents, including the senior vice president for academic affairs, myself, well, I've got a list here anyway, senior vice president for research, CIO, and that's a busy group there. Then for each of the projects, there's a steering committee. And that steering committee is made up of we have representation from deans, we have representations from units that use the system, and then we have representation from the projects overall. And then there are the work teams themselves: financial management, budget, procurement, HR pay, research administration, which is getting folded in here as a result of the work that was done on the project with Huron Consulting, and then student information. But again, we'll emphasize these things down here: the process improvement, change management, communications, training, reporting, and program administration. So this is just an example: steering committees, deans, vice chancellors, other key stakeholders. And then for each project, we've got champion, project manager, leads, and functional and technical and team members. So that's it in a nutshell. There's a lot of getting ready to go here, as you see. A lot of things that have been done, but a lot of getting ready to go. Stop there and take a minute for questions, or a few minutes. Anybody have any questions? And if you do, come up here, just because we are recording this and streaming it. Or I'll repeat your question. How are we doing on the RCM implementation? Okay, next question, please. We're doing pretty well. That was a massive project to take on. And given where we are today, we just had a meeting of the RCM Advisory Committee yesterday, which is mostly deans and others. And I would say that we're well poised to go live. It won't be perfect. It will be pretty good, and that we'll be refining it over time. The thing I like to, if any of you came to previous ones when I talked about RCM, I always emphasize the fact that RCM is simply a budget model. It is simply a tool to show how do the finances, the overall finances of the university work if you organize them in a fully allocated basis. And what it has taught us already are things that we knew or suspected and now are either being proven or certainly part of the budget thinking that the academic leadership needs to do, whether it be the president, chancellors, or the deans, and then center directors. So I would say that we will go live in the next fiscal year with it. No one will be thrown under the bus. That's something that's very important to say. That again, all it does is restate what we already have. Our budget challenges aren't because of RCM. Our budget challenges are because the state's cutting our appropriation. Things are tight. We can't raise tuition very much. Don't want to raise tuition very much because of affordability and access. So a lot of the pieces, and then we're basically revamping the clinical delivery system of RBHS. Those are big lifts, and those things are the real drivers of the economic issues. But what this does is give really good information to the academic leadership to make choices. And that's what it comes down to, is how do you make the choices among the things that contribute to the mission? Including what are the central services? How much you're willing to pay for central services? So now it's explicit rather than going into a black box. In both budget models, the one that all funds budgeting and then the model that UMD&J used, had a black box when it came to central services, so that's gone away. So cautiously optimistic. Still a lot of work to do. A whole lot of work to do. And then a whole lot of assessing and revising for the next time. Other questions? Oh, come on, that can't be the only one. let me off too easy. I'm going to bring up our guest speaker then. Of course. Pardon me.